Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And it is that other Sunday where we have the worldwide story round. And I hand over to the amazing Mike Rust to keep order. Now, Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much to Ali and all the people that helped run this ship. And it's so spectacularly done over so many months. Is it almost a year now, John? It's been longer than a year it's all been going. Yeah, I can see Ali putting his hand up. There's not so many of us here, but it doesn't really matter. I'm sure other people are going to come on. Oh, there's Heather. So I promised 2 weeks ago as we finished this one to do, I don't know many stories from the north of Scotland or the Highlands of Scotland. Well, I've got one. I've sorted it all out. It's ready to go, Heather. So you'll be pleased to know I've got a Stanley Robinson story for you. Okay, but it's a darker story. Some of Stanley's stories were darker. So if there's children here, I'm going to keep it to the very end and ask the children to leave. So if any of the kids come on, I'm just going to play chess with it. Okay, so I will do it, Heather, because I did promise you that I would. But if I'm going to go through it all, so some of the kids come in later, I'll give them the space. So instead of being first, I'll be last. Now I'll shut up. That's what I was trying to say. Okay. Right. So we've got people from hello, Kath. They'll let you out of your cupboard again. Kath just lives in a cupboard, she does, and she eats acorn ice cream. Now, if you've ever had acorn ice cream, don't, Baden. Okay. So I'm going to go first to Jodie. Then I'm going to go to Baba. Okay, make sure you go number 2. Kath, you go number 3, yeah. Okay. Right, so Jodie, if you care to go, just kick off and get started.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I haven't done any performance for a little bit, and they're all starting to come up now. So I thought I'd take a lovely opportunity to come spend some time with you friendly folks and practice a couple. I'm going to do one from the workshop that me and John done first, a very, very short one, but one I really enjoy, and then the one afterwards, if that's okay. So it'll be about 4 or 5 minutes, I think. But yeah, 5, 6 minutes maybe. This first one I wrote during the workshop, and I love it. It's really grown on me. This is called Spinning.
Right, Jodie, we can let you go up to 7.5 minutes today. There's not so many people.
I'll squeeze some more in afterwards then. I've got plenty of them. Yeah. No problem, no problem. Okay, this is Spinning. Sometimes I think about the Earth spinning at 1,000 miles per hour while circling our sun at 66,000 miles per hour, while we rotate the Milky Way at 480,000 miles per hour, and it makes my head spin. How can a ballet dancer pirouette? How can a spider spin a web? How could I ever stand on one leg while this madness is going on? You know, if anyone ever calls you lazy, you can say, well, actually, I'm currently traveling at a combined speed of 547,000 miles per hour, and then spin on your heel and walk away. There we go. My second one, it's a little bit cheeky, this one. You'll forgive me, a bit of a male adolescence crept into this one. I haven't performed it much, but I really enjoy it. The name of this one is I can't remember. I've got written here just a moment, but I think I've changed it since then. But anyway, I'll go now. I'm going to have to read it as well because I can't remember it all. I once queued for 2 hours just to ride a roller coaster, and I wouldn't really have minded, but in 2 minutes it was over. It was up and down and round, then I was sent off on my way. You've had your bit of fun, my son, now get on with your day. And I was left feeling bewildered. My 2 brothers and I had queued so long to take that ride, to feel the thrills, the lows, the highs, then in a blink of an eye it went by. And I remember thinking, that is just like life. It's a very familiar story. We all seek the highs, we all want that ride, and the rest, it's seen as boring. So I thought back to the queue and those slow 2 hours waiting. See, when we first arrived, it was all anticipating. It was all excitement, electrified. It was all, we're finally in the line. But before too long, we realized we were going to be there for some time. So we stood there, stoic, silent, searching eyes while no one spoke, which isn't too unusual because we are all manly blokes. We often stand there silent with the odd nod to each other, but that never lasts too long because we're not just blokes, we're brothers. So the middle one leans in and says, "I've just farted," and he laughs. The young one pulls a face, retreats a pace. That seems to break the ice. Then I say, "Jordan," this is the middle one, "you couldn't have waited until we got on." He said, "Dude, I'm worried if I'd done it on there that more would come out of my bum." Brothers. I mean, we've grown. When we're alone, we're men. But when we get together, we're like little kids again. And we're all smiling, proud, like idiots now. Smiling and laughing, which is smiling really loud. There's some disapproving looks, some smirks. Most people just don't care. They all feel much the way we do. They're just tired of waiting there. So we start to stare as people do when stuck for long waits in long queues. But there isn't much to look at except the roller coasters build. But that just raises safety questions and the fact we could be killed. I mean, it's unlikely, highly unlikely, but once thought, this thought can't stop. For when you see the reality of the ride, what prevents it is not a lot. And it's not the nuts and bolts and that put this, it's not the metal or the nuts and bolts that put its integrity into question, but the staff are the ones who make sure it's safe, and they don't give off that impression. Still, after accepting our mortality and saying it's worth the risk, deciding that dying makes it more exciting says much about how we three tick. The young brother then leans in and cheekily says, "Did you see the size of that girl's breasts?" Whoa. To which I reply, "Dude, you can't objectify women like that. They didn't struggle under patriarchal rules, so some prat could go up and drool. They deserve to be respected for all they have endured. Imagine if mum saw this behaviour, she would hit you with the book." Then as I climb down off my high horse, of course, I take a look, and he was right. They were very impressive. I stand by what I said. But she deserves a mention, not for her dimensions, but more for her back strength. See, the thing is, we pass those slow-lived hours, laughing, chatting, interacting, all the little things we let slip by. But the truth is, we were connecting. And it's hard to keep this in our minds when taking part in a wild ride, getting thrown around Emotion Town in roller coaster life. But I realise more as life goes on, the ride's not all we need. The highs, the lows, the thrills, the spills, the face distorting speed. It seems to me that that doesn't mean as much as those bits in between, the gentle curves where we share our words, where people really meet. See, I can't remember that thrilling ride. It was all over far too fast. But the memories of standing in that line, well, those memories will last. Thank you.
Oh, lovely, lovely, Jody, lovely. Do you want to do one more?
Yeah, can do. Right, let's
Yeah.
see. I didn't get one ready, but right, yeah,
Oh,
I've got a few in here.
How about the one you wrote this morning?
I didn't write one this morning, but I'll do a couple more from the workshop, actually, some very short ones. Here we go. Time Machine, this one's called. This great momentous machine that carves a constant pace, ever still, ever passing, it fills the fabric of space, an interdimensional wedding of concepts, immutable, immovable, unmasterable. So far. Unless you have a car, a DeLorean to be precise, which goes 80 miles per hour and leaves a trail of fire, or a great gyroscopic machine with levers and clocks, which forces the passage of time and the evolution to Morlocks, or maybe a police box, which is itself alive and does not exist in one place, but in all places. It's deceivingly well equipped for space. And if you don't have these things, well, You have your imagination. You have your memory. You have each moment. There we go.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming, Jody. You're always ever so welcome. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right. We said to Baden next. So Baden, then Catherine, John is going to be the order. Okay. Baba, yeah?
Oh, I misunderstood you. Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah, no, sorry. What did I say?
John,
No,
and I,
yeah,
you know, but I'm ready.
yeah. No,
Threw me off a
Baba,
little bit. Hold on. Okay, I got my story.
Go. Off you
So
go.
this is in fact, I have two, but we'll see. We'll play it by ear. This is an Anansi story. And I like Anansi. And for those that may not know, Anansi is often referred to as trickster, but he's also teacher, because we learn by his adventures and misadventures what we should or should not do. Now, there are three things in the world that Anansi loves to do more than anything else in the whole wide world. He loves to eat, he loves to eat, he loves to eat, and he loves to eat some more. Yes, I know, I said three things. He loves to eat, he loves to eat, he loves to eat, and he loves to eat some more. If Anansi's not eating, he just finished eating. Or he's getting ready to eat, because that's what he loves to do. But alas, Anansi's a very lazy fellow. Even though he can cook like no other, he does not like to cook. And he refuses to plant a garden like his neighbors, but he wants to eat. So one day Anansi decided he was in the mood for some baked fish, but he had no money. He had to figure out how he was going to get some fish without any money. So being the fellow he was and having 8 magnificent limbs, he casually strolled down to the beach where he saw a fisherman repairing his net. He said to the fisherman, "Jambo, fisherman." And the fisherman said, "Who's Jambo, Bob? Who's Jambo Anansi?" He says, "What are you doing?" "I'm repairing my net. It has lots of holes. I got to fix the holes so I can go fishing." "Ah, well, let me help." "No, Anansi, I've already finished repairing the holes today, but tomorrow morning I'm going out real early to go fishing, and if you wish to join me, you can join me then." So Anansi said, "I'll be here." "What time?" "An hour before the sun rises." "Okay." So Anansi, he was actually up an hour before the sun rose, and he went down, he saw the fisherman putting the nets in the boat. And the fisherman said, "So Anansi, you're going to help me?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I tell you what, today I will do all the work, and you just sit here and get tired." Anansi said, "No, no, 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 no. That will not do. That will not do. I need to make some money so I can buy me some fish." "Well, I'll pay you, Anansi, but I'll do all the work and you get tired." "No, no, 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 no. I tell you what, you're trying to trick me. You get tired and I will do all the work." And so they didn't really row, but we're going to say they rowed. So they went out to his favorite fishing spot, and the fisherman cast his net. And Anansi began to test the net and check on the net. And the fisherman said, "Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Oh, Lord, I'm so tired." Anansi said, "Yes, yes, you get tired. I will do the work. I will do the work." And so Anansi began to pull in the net and pull in the net and pull in the net until he had a boatload of fish. And the fisherman said, "Oh, Anansi, oh, man, I'm so glad you're here because I'm so tired. I couldn't lift another leg. I'm so tired." And he said, "Yes, that's right. You're so tired. And I will do the work." He said, "Tomorrow we will count and sort the fish and then take it to market." So the next morning, an hour before the sunrise, Anansi showed up bright and early. And the fisherman said, "Anansi, yesterday I got so tired and you did all the work. Today I will do the work and you get tired and I will pay you after we go to market." Anansi said, "You're trying to trick me. I'm on to you. No, 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 no. I will do the work and you can get tired." And so Anansi began to sort the fish by size and type, And the fisherman sat on the beach going, oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Oh, Lord, I'm so tired. Oh, Anansi, let me help. No, 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 no. I will do the work because it must get done right. You just sit there and get tired. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. So at the end of the day, the fish was all sorted. And Anansi said, now we can go to market. He said, oh, no, Anansi, it's too late to go to market today. We'll have to go tomorrow. Anansi said, I'll see you an hour before sunrise. And so the next day, Anansi was there an hour before sunrise. And this is before alarm clocks. And the fisherman said, Anansi, for the last 2 days, you have worked so hard and I have been so tired. Today we go to market and we will sell the fish. But I tell you what, today I will do the work and you get so tired. No, I don't want to be tired. I have no time to be tired. I will do the work, for this must be done. And so Anansi, he put all the fish in the great big pots, and then he began to walk to town carrying the big fish on top of his head and with his upper limbs. And they got to town, and all the time they were walking, the fisherman said, oh, I'm so tired. Anansi, watching you do all this work is making me so tired. So tired, so tired. And when they got to the village, Anansi was tired. And so he had to sit down because he was so worn out. And the fisherman did all the work and sold all the fish, all of it. And then he paid Anansi a handsome sum. And Anansi said, oh, I knew this would work. For 3 days I've done all the work while you were so tired. And today I was too tired to do the work. And you did the work. And you sold all the fish, so I have money now. And now I can go to market and buy me some fish. But all the fish had been sold. And Anansi was too tired to go knock on doors to see if he could buy fish from the people they sold fish to. Because he was so tired. He was so tired. And the fisherman went home with a nice amount of money because he did all the work. And the lesson of this story is, sometimes we spend more energy trying to get out of doing what needs to be done than if we just simply did it. So the next time you're hard at work and you hear somebody else going, I'm so tired, I'm so tired, remember this tale, Asante. I love Anansi.
Absolutely. That's lovely, well done and well told. Right, so we got Kath. Don, what was you going to say?
No, I was going to say, do I do another one or you want to come back?
There's not that many of us here, so if you've got a shortish one, you carry on. Absolutely.
Okay, so this one is I'm going to do this story in this form several times. Not today, but it's a story that I've known for a long time, but I'm experimenting with it because of Zoom and COVID and all that kind of stuff. So this is a story about the Great Race, and a long time ago. I always want to hold it longer, but I'm afraid the mic will bleep me out. There was a big argument going around in the jungle. In the jungle, the mighty... Oh, no, that's another story. Okay, so there's a great big argument going around about who was the fastest animal around. And the rabbit said, well, I'm fast. Nobody can hop faster than me. Watch me. But everyone was talking about how fast. The gazelle was so graceful. Everyone was arguing and saying they were the fastest. But Anansi, yes, this is another Anansi story. Anansi decided that he wanted to be declared the fastest animal in all of the jungle. So he went down to the river and he called on the great hippo. Great hippo! And the great hippo magically appeared. And the great hippo said, who calls on me and what would you have? I am Anansi the spider. Oh yes, I know who you are. There's an argument going on about who is the fastest animal in the jungle. And I want to be declared the fastest animal in the jungle. Well then, sounds like we need to have a race, a great race. And whoever crosses the finish line first will be declared the fastest animal in all the jungle. Anansi said, okay, not a problem. Now you see, even though a spider can grow to be bigger than Baba C's hand, and that's quite big for a spider, it is small compared to the hippo. It is small compared to the gorilla. And I know you say, why did he say gorilla? Because if I saw anything that big and ugly coming after me, I go real fast to get away from it. But bump. Bad joke, bad joke. What you gonna do? Anyhow. And he couldn't fly like the birds. Silly birds. But he was determined he was going to win the race. So he started checking out the other animals. And word had gone out. And he found the cheetah. I've never understood why they call it a cheetah when it doesn't. But he found the cheetah and he said, Cheetah, rumor is that you think you're the fastest animal in all the jungle. And the cheetah said, oh, that's no rumor, I am. Oh, we shall see, for there's a great race coming up and I think I can beat you. And the cheetah said, I'd like to see that. Careful what you wish for. And so on the day of the great race, many animals were assembled, including the giraffe, including the crocodile. Many people don't know that a crocodile can run as fast as a horse for a few minutes. If you ever get chased by a crocodile, climb a tree. They can't climb trees. And the other animals were the panther and the king of the jungle, the lion, and the gazelle, and the rabbit, and the monkey, and many others were assembled. But these were the ones that had the biggest attachment to being first. And so they were off. And there was a big confusion of condominiums. There was a big confusion of animals, and the dust raised, and the dust went down, the dust went this way, and the dust went that way, and they were fast, and they were running and running. And the giraffe had nice long legs, and it galloped, but bam, it got taken out by a low-hanging branch. The monkey was laughing at it, and while the monkey was laughing, he missed a branch and fell. He was out of the race. The gazelle was galloping gracefully. The panther was not far behind. The gazelle thought the panther was after it and started running faster, and the panther was running fast. And the king of the jungle, zoom, zoom, in front of everyone. And soon everyone was eating the dust of the lion, king of the jungle. But king of the jungle heard a bird calling out to him. There was a disagreement taking place in the village, and they needed his wisdom. So he left. And the other animals were running. The rabbit was hip hoppity 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 hippity hippity hoppity 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 hoppity, and he hopped and fell into a hole. He was out of the race. And soon it was down to the gazelle, the cheetah, the panther, and nowhere was Anansi to be found. And they kept on racing, and they kept on racing, and the gazelle, as graceful as it was, ran out of steam. And it had to stop. Soon it was just a panther and it was just a panther and the cheetah, and the panther and the cheetah are running neck and neck, and the cheetah begins to pull ahead of the panther just barely, and the panther starts to pull ahead of the cheetah, and his cheetah and his panther and his cheetah and his panther, and just as they got to the finishing line with the cheetah slightly in front, Anansi had been hiding in the cheetah's fur on top of its head. And as the cheetah got ready to cross the finish line, Anansi leaped off and landed first and declared himself winner of the great race. The cheetah said, and they call me a cheater? Where did he come from? And the panther said, yeah, where did he come from? And they both looked, and all of a sudden, the great hippo appeared. And the great hippo said, now, before I announce the winner of this great race, if there's a liar or a trickster here, they need to announce themselves now, or I'll make them disappear, never to be seen again. So I ask you, Anansi, and you must answer fair and square. Did you run and finish first in the great race? Lie to me and you'll have no name. Now, in certain societies, if you have no name, you have no power, you have no influence, people won't even speak to you. And Anansi thought about it. He could insist that he won it, but then lose his name. And then his fame would be his shame. And he thought and he looked, And he knew the great hippo already knew. He said, no, I even though he's called the cheetah, I'm the one that cheated. I'm not the winner of the great race. And the great hippo said, you answered well. So now, as your punishment for cheating, in the rafters and in trees and hidden places you must dwell from now until the end of all that is. And you must announce the winner of the great race. The fastest animal in all the land, the fastest animal in the jungle, is indeed the cheetah, who didn't cheat, but won the race fair and square. And with that, the great hippo disappeared. And to this day, Anansi is known as trickster and is not to be trusted. And even though they call him the cheetah, he doesn't. But beware, the cheetah is the fastest animal in the jungle. And unlike the crocodile, he can climb trees. Sometimes it's not necessary to be fast, but it is necessary to finish what you do. Asante.
Oh,
So that's a story in evolution. You'll probably hear it again over the course of the summer as it gets modified and readapted for call and response.
oh, absolutely. It's a lovely story. I've heard it many times. But Grace Holsworth told me that story, and Grace is a legend in this country from many years ago. So it's lovely to hear it again. Right, Kath, over to you.
Thank you, Mike.
Then we're
Thank you,
going to
Barbara, for
John.
that story.
Yeah, and
Oh,
then
my
we're going
pleasure.
to John
Thank you.
Rowe afterwards. That's going to be interesting. Anyway, Kath, over to you.
Right here. It was a hot summer day, and the old woman toiled along the road, bent down by the heavy sack that she carried on her back. To either side of her, the fields stretched away, the corn ripening in the hot sun. If she'd lifted her head and looked up in front of her, she would have seen a walled town some distance away. She kept her head down with her back bent under the weight, putting one foot in front of the other, the dust rising from the road with every step. And eventually, she did come to the gate in the walls of that town. And the guards looked at her, an old woman carrying a sack. What threat could she possibly be? So they let her in. And she made her way through the streets of the town until she came to the centre where there was the market square. And in the market square, she put down her load and she reached into the sack and she took out one single book. And she held the book up and she said to no one in particular, in my possession, I have 12 volumes. In these volumes is all the knowledge and wisdom in the world. I will sell these books to you, the people of this town, for 25 gold coins. And then she waited. And of course it aroused a little interest, but 25 gold coins was a lot of money, even if it was all the knowledge and wisdom in the world. And so after some time, when it was clear no one was going to come forward to buy the books, the old woman put down the book she had in her hand. She reached into the sack, she took out another 5. And one by one, she wrenched the covers from the books. She tore the book page from page until the 6 books were a pile of leather and card and paper at her feet. And she took a box of matches and she held the flame to the edge of one sheet of paper. And the flame traveled along the edge of the paper. It caught light to the whole pile. And the old woman stood and watched it burn until it was nothing but ashes. And then she turned, lifted the sack onto her shoulder, and she left that town. That autumn, The crops did less well than they usually did. The weather was wetter and colder than it usually was. The winter seemed longer. And the people of the town were very glad when once again spring came and they could at least plant vegetables in their own gardens that they could eat. As spring turned to summer, again, the old woman was walking along that dusty road with the sack on her back, not so heavy this time. Again, on either side, fields of corn were ripening. She came to the gate. The guards let her in. She made her way to the centre of the town. She dropped the sack onto the floor and she took out one volume. I have in my possession 6 volumes. In these books is half of the knowledge and wisdom in the world. I will sell these books to you, the people of this town, for 50 gold coins. And there was a little more interest than the previous year. But 50 gold coins? Nobody was going to pay that. And so when it was clear nobody was going to come forward, the old woman took 2 more volumes from her sack. She wrenched off the covers. She ripped them page from page until, again, there was a slightly smaller pile of leather and card and paper at her feet. With the match, she held it to the edge of one sheet of paper until the whole pile caught and eventually turned to ashes. And then she turned with her sack on her shoulder and she left that city. If the previous autumn had been bad, this autumn was worse. It was wetter and colder than the year before. The crops did even less well. The winter was bitter. And people of the town began to worry for their children. They began to worry for their older relatives. People were very, very glad when spring finally came. And when spring turned to summer, walking along the road to that town, with a much lighter sack on her shoulder, was the old woman. And again the road was dusty, and again the fields were full of ripening corn, and again she was allowed into the town, and again she made her way to the marketplace. She put down the sack. She took out one book. I have in my possession 3 books. In these books is 1/4 of all the knowledge and wisdom of the world. I will sell these 3 books to you, the people of this town, for 100 gold coins. Across the other side of the market square, there was a little knot of people. They had their heads together. There appeared to be some sort of urgent conversation going on, and then one man stepped forward. I say he stepped forward, it was more of a lurch, as if somebody had given him a very firm shove in the middle of his back. And he made his way across the market square until he was standing opposite the old woman, who looked at him. He said, a few of us actually, we were wondering, these books that you mention, I mean, that, you know, we're all worthy people of the town, and what's more important, we're literate. And we were thinking perhaps we could examine or peruse in some fashion these aforementioned volumes and or tomes, indeed books, prior to effecting a purchase, to ascertain their value and perhaps worth. That's what we were all thinking. And the old woman said, "You mean you want to look at the books before you buy them, see if they're any good?" Well, essentially, yes, that's it. That's what they said as well. Yeah, we would. Yes, yes, we would. She said, well, that's perfectly understandable. And the fee for examining the books before you buy them is 100 gold coins. Oh, I'll just go, and he scurried across the market square to join the little group of people. There was even more urgent conversation going on. And eventually the same man returned with what looked like a very heavy bag, which he handed to the old woman, and she handed him the sack, and she turned and she left the town, never to be seen again. Well, when the worthy people of the town did indeed examine the books, what the old woman had said was true. There was great wisdom held within the pages. The best woodsmen were sent out into the forest to cut down the finest trees. The best carpenters were employed to make a house for these books, a library indeed. The books were displayed in glass cabinets, and they did that thing where somebody comes along with gloved hands and they turn over a page every day, so that if you go in every day, you can eventually read all of the books. Except they were about 1/3 of the way through the books when someone who'd been reading the page of the day fancied a cigarette, and he went round the back of the wooden building, and he just finishing his cigarette, and he dropped it on the ground, and he thought he'd trodden on it. But the smouldering end of his cigarette just caught the dry wood, and the flame licked along the edge of the wood until it caught light, and so did the rest of the building. And the blaze indeed was glorious, but all the books were destroyed, which might go some way to explaining why the world is in the pickle that it's in. Thank you. And I should just say, the first version of that story that I heard, that's my version, but the first version I heard was from a storyteller called Bronya Evers. Great teller.
Great, Kath, thanks so much. That was great. Okay, so now we're going to go to John Rowe, and after that we're going to go to Diana. Mike, unfortunately, has had to leave, but I'm sure he'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So after Diana, Normally, put your hand up if you want to do one. Are you wanting to do one tonight?
Right now, I'm a little bereft of inspiration. So I was in a session where I told a story earlier.
That's lovely to have you here listening. Never apologize.
Yeah, I'm listening this time. If something comes, excuse the expression, comes burning up, I'll let you know.
Absolutely brilliant. Okay, so we go Diana, and then John. Okay. Oh no, sorry, it's John and then Diana. Okay.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Kat. They've been brilliant stories so far tonight. I was reminded by on the crocodiles running fast tonight, and they said there was this plague of crocodiles, and I thought of crocodiles, so I think I wandered down to the beach to see 4 crocodiles, and when I got back, everyone told me off about crocodiles and did explain that they could run incredibly fast, and I would have been eaten should I have seen one. So I was kind of pleased that I missed that opportunity. I'm not sure if I've told this before, but well, I've told it before, but obviously trouble is we've been going since March the 23rd in last year, so, or that's not the trouble, but there's been lots of telling, so I can't remember what I've done and what I haven't. But this is a story from India, and I probably dug it out 3,000 years ago from a book of Indian folk tales, but I can't be sure where it came from. And it's from way back, but it is from way back in time when my hair was dark and all my teeth were young. And there was a merchant, and he was leading an ox down the road. And on the back of the ox was a huge sack of peas. And the ox was rocking from one side to another. And I don't know whether anyone's ever ridden a bicycle with, and they've sort of clipped something onto the back, and it seems steady when it started, but it gradually slides to one side. And it was a bit like that with that sack of peas, and the sack of peas fell off. He's trying to pick it up. It's just too heavy. And he's looking around for some help, and it's not what about, but Mouse coming down the road. He said, "Excuse me, Mouse, can you help me on the back of this ox with this sack of peas?" Nothing strange about a talking merchant. So between a stack of peas, and they put it back on the ox, and the merchant was so pleased. It was kind of one of the little contracts that had no security whatsoever. And but there was one falling out in the road, so the mouse had two. Didn't trust the merchant in the first place.
Amy on the phone
he had 3 people
today. She sounds a little bit like raspy.
Fantastic! You read my mind. Wonderful. Anyway, 3 peas. So he went home and he planted them in front of his hole, and he said, "Look, unless there's 3 by the morning, I'll cut you up and I'll feed you to the ox." And you'd be sure the next morning when he woke up, green shoots. He said, "Look, unless there's 3 fantastic flowers by the morning, I'll feed you to the ox." And you'd be sure the next morning when he woke up, there were 3 fantastic flowers. He said, "Look, unless there's 3 fine fat pods by the morning full of peas, I'll cut you up. And if you're unmuted, you can all shout out at this point." To the ox. Yeah, I heard your mouth. Anyway, you'd be sure when he woke up next morning, there were 3 fine fat pods full of fat peas. And he ate, and he ate. And he got fatter and fatter and fatter. Now, if you're a mouse, you had a bit of flab and you everyone would think you're really good looking species. And he's walking down the road and he's whacking his flab from one side to the other. Sees another mouse come down the road. She goes, "Woo! Where'd you get all that flab?" "I'll show you." And they went and they ate and they ate and they ate. She ran around the room, ran down the hole. She thinks, "I'm winning tonight," and ran down behind her. He way down. So he went to the king. No, he didn't. He went to the carpenter. Carpenter, cut me down the size so I can get down my hole. And the carpenter said, "Do you mind to get new furniture ready for, up at that site, Word In Edgeways will happen eventually when all this stuff is over. I haven't just go away." So he went to the king, told carpenter to cut me down the size so I can get down my hole. The king said, "Hey, after I haven't got time to deal with mouse. Go away." So the king won't tell carpenter to cut me down the size so I can get down my hole. The queen said, "Oh, I'm not going, mouse. Do you mind? Go away." So he went to the snake. He went snake, bite, queen, won't lead, king, won't tell carpenter to cut me down the size so I can get down my hole. And the snake said, "Look, it's the first hot day for months. I just want to lay here basking in the sun. Do you mind? Go away." So he went to a stick. He went stick, beat, snake, won't bite, queen, won't lead, king, won't tell carpenter to cut me down the size so I can get down my hole. And the stick said, "Look, I spent all day beating a thief." It's a kind of Daily Mail reading stick. From BBC's point of view, the Daily Mail would be like an extreme Republican publication that thinks crime severely. And so all day beating a thief. I haven't got any energy left. Do you mind? Go away. So I went to the When I'm with kids, I ask them what a furnace is. They don't know. I say it's what we have when we're in the industry. Furnace, furnace, burn, stick, stick, one beat, snake, snake, one bite, queen, queen, one lead, king, king, one talk up, the captain down the side. So and the furnace said, "Do you mind? I'm cooking the king's dinner." Oh. He said, he went to the ocean. He said, "Ocean, ocean, put out furnace, furnace, one burn, stick, one bite, queen, queen, one lead, king, king, one talk up, the captain down the side. So I can get down my hole." And the ocean said, "Look, the tide's high. The sun's in the sky, go away." So I went to the elephant. He went elephant, elephant, drink, ocean, ocean, one put up, furnace, furnace, one burn, stick, stick, one beat, snake, snake, one bite, queen, queen, one lead, king, king, one talk up, the cup down the side, so I can get down my pool. The elephant burped really loud. Said, "Look, I've just drunk a lake. I haven't got room for an ocean, go away." So he went to the vine. He said, "Vine, vine, strangle, elephant, elephant, one drink, ocean, ocean, one put out, furnace, furnace, one burn, stick, stick, one beat, snake, snake, one bite, queen, queen, one lead, king, king, one talk up, the cup down the side, so I can get down my hole." And the vine said, "Look, I'm stuck to this tree. I couldn't help you even if I wanted to. Go away." So he went to the side. I cut down vine, vine, one strangle, elephant, elephant, one drink, ocean, ocean, one put out furnace, furnace, one burn, stick, stick, one beat, snake, snake, one bite, queen, queen, one lead, king, king, one talk up, the cup down the side, so I can get down my hole. Unfortunately for my breath and your patience, the side is always sharp. And it said, "Okay. Now, if you unmute at this point, you can count me down, so to speak." And so the side began to cut down the...
Can't remember.
Vine.
Vine, vine. Someone said vine.
The vine.
Vine, vine. Vine began to strangle the
Elephant.
Elephant.
elephant. The elephant began to
And
drink
began to
the
drink the ocean.
Ocean.
ocean began to put out the
Fire.
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 Furnace.
Furnace.
what not just a fire. What kind of fire?
Furnace.
Furnace.
Furnace, furnace.
Furnace.
Furnace began to burn the
Stick.
stick, began to beat the
Snake.
Snake.
snake, began to bite the... Well, you can choose between Cass, Heather, Diana, Susan, any of them, but you know, Cass began to... No, not Cass, began... Snake began to bite the
Cow.
royalty.
Royal.
King.
The king.
No,
Oh,
I said Cass or Diana or Heather or Susan.
Queen.
Queen,
Princess.
Queen, Queen began to leave the
King.
king. King told the
Cook.
carpenter to cut the...
Carpenter.
This is really important. It's the central character.
Mouse.
the mouse.
The mouse, down to size and got down it.
Oh.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Very good, John. Very, very good.
If you talk a little faster,
That's
John,
my
we
deep
could
and
get-
meaningful contribution to the evening.
If
I
you
just
said
want
it
you
a
to
little
make
faster,
sure-
we would have caught it.
Yeah, if you were you need to go a bit faster, John, then we'd have understood it better. Right, we're going to Diane now. Then we go from Diane. I think it's going to be me and then Heather, if that's okay. All right. So Diane up next.
Hey. Hi, delighted to be here, and I'm not sure if it's because I stay in the northeast of Scotland and it's a cooler climate and all that, but I've always been fascinated by places like Morocco. And at the start of COVID, I was always searching through Facebook or online somewhere for stories to keep me amused while you couldn't do anything else really, or very little apart from 1 hour exercise a day. So I found this person telling a story, Richard Hamilton, and he used to be the BBC correspondent in Morocco. And they were also selling a book called The Last Storytellers, and it's about the tales of Morocco. And so I listened to him, and then I bought the book, and I'm working my way through it. But the story that I'm going to tell you is actually by a man called Abderrahim El Makouri. And basically what this Richard Hamilton has done is collected all these different tales from Morocco. But I've just got this wonderful image. I've never been to Morocco, But Marrakesh sounds such a wonderful place, and all this meeting ground for so many people and such a long tradition of storytelling that I would love to go one day. Anyway, here we go. This is the story. There was once a king, and he ruled quite fairly. He also had a prime minister who he used to consult for advice. Now, there was one day the king was in his garden, and of course he had many gardeners, but he really enjoyed gardening. So there he was with a bamboo stick, and he was sharpening it to make a stake for one of the bushes when his prime minister came by. And perhaps because his attention was diverted, he slashed part of his finger off. And of course he cried out, "Ah!" And then he had to get it bandaged. But what on earth did the prime minister say? He said, "It's good." Now, the king didn't think it was good at all. And he was really angry, and he let the prime minister know. And he told him, because he still had so much power in the land, he could go to the jail now and stay there. So what could the prime minister do? He didn't have as much power as the king. Well, he got it all bandaged up, and days after that, he was involved with state affairs as normal, was the king. But then he got really tired of it all. He didn't like all the intrigue always, and how things took so long to resolve because you had to take account of everyone's viewpoint. And he decided he would go on a bit of a jaunt. So he arranged for a boat to take him, and he didn't have to do any of the work. He just had to sit there and take in the scenery and the restful atmosphere round about. And they travelled for quite a bit on this boat, and he came to an island. And when he went to the island, he decided he would get off the boat himself, just on his own, and go and explore. Well, he was the king, so that's what he did. But after a short time, he came across some natives. And to begin with, he wasn't quite sure what they were saying. But then their actions were very vivid, and he understood completely that if he stayed there, he would be captured, and that would be the end of him. He would be sacrificed at dawn. Well, he didn't like the sound of that, obviously, but he didn't really have time to turn heel and go back to the ship because there were soldiers approaching, and they're approaching fast, and there were far too many of them for him to deal with. So what was he going to do but be captured? And then he was taken to the high priest. And the high priest looked at him, and the king was getting very fearful for his own life. But the king said, "We have a tradition on this island whereby people who are captured have to be examined first to see if they are suitable for sacrifice." And so the king was rendered naked. And they checked every part of him. And then they found this one part that was missing, part of his finger. And they said, consequently, he was imperfect and he couldn't be sacrificed. So off he went, as fast as he could, down to that ship, and then went back home. And he was remembering about his prime minister and how his prime minister had said, "It's good." And he thought, did he know? Did he know this was going to happen to me? And that if I'd had my finger, then I would have been sacrificed. But because part of it was off, I was imperfect. Did he know that? And he thought about it more. And he thought as well about the different ways that this prime minister said, "It's good." Sometimes he would be emphatic. "It's good," like a proclamation. Other times it might be like a question. "It's good." "It's good." Or it might be with a smile in his voice. "It's good." Or it might be very quietly. "It's good." But it wasn't a phrase that was attached to this prime minister. And although at times it could be annoying, extremely annoying, he realized that perhaps the prime minister knew a bit more. He, in his mind, gave him more respect. So when he got back to his homeland, the first thing he did was go to the jail. And he said to the prime minister, well, he told him all about what had happened. And then he said to him at the end, "And how has it been in jail?" And what did the Prime Minister say? It's good. And the king was just about to go up in a temper, but then curiosity begged him to stop. And he said, what do you mean it's good? Not everything is good. It can't be possible. And he said, well, if I had come with you to the island and we'd been captured, I would have been the one to be sacrificed and you would have got off scot-free. So it's good that I was in jail. And after that, there was more respect between the Prime Minister and the King. Thank you.
Oh. Right, so 2 weeks ago, we were talking about a fellow called Stanley Robinson. So if those of you who don't know who he was a fine Scottish storyteller who slept in the room that I'm sat in to this day. And he came from the north of Scotland, and he was, it wasn't Inverness itself, but it was up that part of Scotland. And he used to come down to Whitby Folk Week time and time again. We invited him down for years on the whole. Sometimes he'd alternate with Eddie Lenihan and one or two others, but on the whole, for the last few years of his life, he came every year. But the thing about Stanley Robinson was two things. He knew every country and western song you've ever heard, and he enjoyed singing them, and he played the pipes. Now, all the way through this, there's a couple of you from Scotland, from the Highlands of Scotland. You're going to have to remember this is an Englishman telling a Scottish Highland story. So if I get some of it a bit wrong, you can just put it right when you take this story if you want to and take it away. But he played what I call the war pipes. Now, the war pipes are the ones you see the soldiers playing when they march up and down outside Buckingham Palace and things. Now, I well know that they've got laptop pipes and they've got little pipes and greater, smaller pipes and all sorts of stuff. But these are the war pipes. He could play all the others, but these were the war pipes. But later on in his life, he had a little box that he hung around his neck. And it was no more than this whistle I've got here, but square. And they were electric pipes because his fingers were getting a bit arthritic. And he used to sing the old ballads. He was famous for singing the old ballads. And there was just the two of us one afternoon, and we had to do a couple of hours together. And there was about 20 or 30 people sat there probably, because Eddie Lenihan couldn't come that day. And so Stanley said, do you mind if I start off, Mike? I've got a couple of stories from the Highlands. I said, you just carry on trying to work out what I was going to do. Because we had a rule in Whitby, you can never tell the same story twice. We were there for 7 days, and we'd all do a couple of hours storytelling most days, but you never told the same story twice. And Stanley, he started telling these stories. Now, I'm racking my brain for some others, but I'm pretty certain I've got this one. Now, right, this is the second apology to you two lasses from the Highlands, because the tune I'm going to play is an English one. He played a Scottish one, but I've been through all my, I'm sat here in my room. I've been through all my books, and I know Scandinavian ones because I play my nickel harp and one or two, but I don't know many Scottish ones. And certainly not to play in public. So I'm going to do just an English Welsh border one. So he went, I'll tell you a story about the Highlands. There's three things you have to remember about the Highlands. The men aren't tall, but they're brave. The women are the most beautiful women anywhere in the whole of the world, particularly on the outside, but their hearts are as big as the mountains they live in, and they are beautiful on the inside as well. And thirdly, there's a kindness in the community, and that kindness is sometimes expressed by the way the shepherds and the shepherdesses have a little black and white collie dog that will follow them around. Now, the custom in some farms is that the dogs stay outside. And in the other places, and in England in the same, in the shepherding communities, it's always the same. But up in the Scotland, quite often, you'd see a young Highland lass, and she'd have a little black and white dog. And he would follow her around, or she would follow her around. And this was the one that slept at the end of the bed. And this was the one that had a cup of tea or whatever they drank first thing in the morning. She'd get one as well. But when it was came, and the third thing is that the most beautiful part of the whole of the Highlands is the night of the full moon, that sometimes they call the hunter's moon and sometimes they call the lover's moon. But when you can almost see in the night, like in the daytime, when the chap, he would walk with his lady and the little black dog would come with him, and the three most beautiful things in the Highlands would be there in one to make a beautiful space. Now, it was a night just as like that, but a long, long time ago, when the Viking ships came. And the Viking ships, they came into this little community and there was a harbour. And they could see everything and they just came off, but no one was expecting them, and they raided into the houses and they gathered all the people up, set fire to the stuff. They started eating all the food and drinking all the drinks, but there was a little cottage a bit higher up, and three Vikings went up there and they went into that cottage and they got the man and the woman and they tied them up and knocked them out and put them to one side. But there was a daughter there, and the daughter was about 16 years old, and she had a little black and white collie. And those three Vikings, they took her into the barn, and what was going to happen to her in that barn, she wasn't going to have any say in. It was going to happen to her if she'd wanted to or not. And she definitely didn't want this to happen. And the Vikings were standing there and they threw on the ground and they were laughing and thinking this was going to be a good time. And suddenly they turned round and there was a 4 foot high, 5 foot adder snake. And it was just there. And they looked, but a snake, as you all know, has got 2 fingers. And one of the tongue flicked. And the eyesight of the first Viking had gone. He put his hands to his eyes and he shouted, and his friends turned to see what was happening. They looked at the snake, but the girl herself, well, she was a Scottish lass. She stood up and she kicked one of them straight between the legs. Now, for you fellas, you'll understand that it's painful enough already, but when it's erect and you're expecting it to do something and you get something like that, that floors you completely. And he hit the ground like a sack of potatoes. And the little girl and the adder snake both turned on the third one, who did the brave and courageous thing and ran as fast as he could out the door. Well, he ran down into the town and he started yelling, and all the other Vikings came out and they looked round and he said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "There's the snakes. They're blinded, Olaf and Norrid. There's snakes." And the Vikings said, "Yeah, sure there are." And they turned and they looked up into the Highlands. But there were snakes coming down the hills. There was about 8 or 9 adder snakes coming down from the hills. And they were about 5 or 6 foot tall. And the tail was flicking. And there was the shorter one that was there first. And they were all coming down and the moon was full. And the Vikings took one look. And they all legged it straight into their boats. And they got their boats straight out. And they all knew that the adders, if they did come into the ocean, they wouldn't come far into the ocean. So they got the boat so far out and they looked up and they stayed and they were holding it and they were waiting for the day to come. And as the day came, the moon disappeared, but there was a slight gap. And as the sun came up, all they could see was the community being roused and coming round. But they couldn't see any snakes, but they could see some black and white dogs. Well, they went away. But those 2 Vikings, they were kept. The one who was blinded was shackled to the one who recovered after a day or so, and they were put to work. And they had to start mending and doing the stuff that they'd destroyed. And they were sometimes fed and sometimes weren't. They weren't looked after in the way that we look after. They'd come there to rape and to pillage and to drink all the food and do that to the women. They weren't liked and treated with kindness, and their lives were miserable. But they were still alive that spring when one boat came, and it parked itself out into the ocean, and a little boat got out, and there was a tiny little boat, and 2 men just rowed to the shore, and they stopped at the shore and they picked up a hazel bush, a branch, which was the thing they used to do before the white flags. And they threw it onto the beach and said, "We want to talk and trade." But the Scots were there waiting, and they had their swords. And like I said, they're not a tall nation, but their hearts are strong, and they had their swords and their axes. And they sat there with their arms crossed like this and said, what do you want? She said, we want to trade, but what do you want to trade? We want the 2 men that were left, and we want to know how much it's going to cost us. Well, there was a silence. And they came down, and they looked at the 2 men who were half starved. And they got jewels out, and they put it on a blanket. And they got the girl who was 17 now, and she came down. And they said, you pick the first thing, and everybody will pick one thing. And when everybody's picked one thing, you can have these 2 men back, because we don't really want them anyway. And she picked 2 brooches. And then the custom in them days was a great big cloak, and there was a brooch there, and there was a brooch there. And that was the Saxon times. But the Scots, they had a plaid, I think you call it, that comes over the shoulder, and they just have 1 brooch. But these 2 were identical. And they say that she kept the other brooch for her daughter. And when she died, her daughter kept that brooch and gave it to her daughter. And they say somewhere in the Highlands, there are 2 brooches that are identical, but they're only ever worn one at a time. Well, those 2 Vikings, they went. They were taken back to where they came from, up in the Northlands, up in the Denmark and the Norway and the Swedes and the Finns, wherever they came from. And they sat down and they told the story that they'd seen. Now, the Vikings, we know. We know about the sagas. They like stories. They tell stories about Beowulf. And if you ever listen to someone from up those parts, there's always trolls in the story somewhere. There's little trolls and there's big trolls and there's witches and there's all sorts of things. So they sit themselves and they like. But they noticed after a bit that the one was blind could begin to see again, particularly at the time of the full moon. And after a while, his sight, month after month, seemed to be coming back. And they listened to their stories. And they heard how there was little black and white collie dogs that would run round in the communities. But they'd noticed that winter, the time of the full moon, that time of the month, for something, and 50% of our population, if they're younger, things would change when the moon came out. And they couldn't guarantee that they'd seen snakes. But they said they couldn't guarantee they hadn't seen them either, because they dreamt of snakes. And sometimes at that time, snakes would come into their mind and it scared them, so they hadn't made to try and make an escape. They thought they were there for the rest of their lives. So anyway, when it came to the raiding times again, and the Viking expression for the Vikings, by the way, is going on a bit of a jolly. That's what to Viking means from that end. So we call them Vikings. They don't matter whether that's what their expression is going on. It doesn't matter where they come from. So they all sat down. And their chief was a fellow called Thongst. And he sat down there and he had a great big beard, and they didn't have those Viking horn things that you see nowadays, but and none of all that stuff. But they sat down, but he was a good war leader. He was experienced. And he said, look, he said, our disadvantage is keep going backwards and forwards across the way or the oceans all the time. We need someone over there that we can rest and stay for a bit longer. And they said, don't go to the land of the snakes. Don't go to those Scottish people. You have to go somewhere else. So he heard them. So instead of coming, he came to Shetland. Instead of putting Shetland on his right and coming down the east coast, he put Shetland on his left, and he went round and he came down the islands. And the men in his boats, there were 5 or 6 of them, they weren't going to any of those islands. That looked just the same. And anyway, that was close enough to where the stories had come from. So they went down and they found another island, and they went to the east coast of there, and they stopped there. They found a place where a river came down, and they called it the place of the Black Pool. And in their languages, it was called Dyffryn. And today we call it Dublin. And they caused a little settlement there. They didn't particularly at that point want to go raiding. They wanted to settle so they could go backwards and forwards, and they wanted more land. But the first thing they did was to go out and find someone. And they found someone. And he was a short little fella. And he was a Roman, and he'd been backwards and forwards, and he spoke a funny language, and his name was Patrick, and he was a Christian. And they sat him down and he said, do you know anything about snakes? And he says, yeah, I banned all the snakes from Ireland. So there's none here at all. So the Vikings felt safe. Now they say, according to my friend Stanley, that the men in the Highlands are tall and brave. That the women, they are the beauty, they take their beauty from the hills that they live in, but their beauty in their heart. And they have a wonderful relationship with all things. But the time to go to the Highlands is the time of the full moon. Because the Highlands look their best. And a clear night and a full moon with a man and a woman walking through the heather. And in time and time again, when I go and watch it, he said, you'll see in the distance the man and a woman and a little black white collie dog. And that little black white collie dog sometimes disappears and sometimes comes back. Right, that's as close as I can remember it, Heather. It really is. Okay. Right. Right, so where we got to? So, Heather, you can do one yourself?
Yeah, I could do.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that's
Absolutely. Then, Susan, you're the only one left then. If you want to do one, you'd be very welcome to. Or Norman, we'll talk afterwards. So we'll let Heather do her stuff now. Okay.
That was grand, Mike, having a couple stories from Stanley. They're not ones that I'd ever heard, but as you know, I knew Stanley when I was, especially when I was a child. My mother did her PhD on folk narrative, and she was Stanley Robertson and actually Ray Hicks over in Appalachia were the two main people she did. It was on Tales, the comparative sort of what happened to them.
Yeah, Ray Hicks was about 9 foot tall.
Yeah, he was an amazing man. And his wife was this beautiful little creature. Anyways, but so my mum used to sometimes take me out of school to go up on the train to Aberdeen to hear Stanley. So I was a very lucky child. And so he instilled a deep love for supernatural stories, like the ones you've told, Mike, and also for Jack Tales. So this is just one of some of his Jack Tales are monster epic sagas, but this is the shortish one, and it's a typical traveller story. And it happened a long time ago in Scotland. There was in this wee village, there was a lad called Jack, and he was a bit of a character. He was always charging off on his own, and he would go off into the woods and into the hills and have adventures, and he would come back into town, into the village, and he would always have stories to tell. And it was great tales of heroism and strength, places that he'd seen these great creatures like giants that he'd managed to cut their heads off, and how he had leapt from one hill to the next, and he had always these amazing stories to tell. And the people would see Jack coming and they would shake their head and say, "Oh, that laddie, he's always telling lies." And they would say to him, "You know, you're going to get into trouble one day for all these lies that you tell." And he would just laugh. And he would keep telling the stories of his adventures. It so happened one day, a stranger was in the village, and he overheard Jack telling some of his stories. And he thought, "Oh my goodness, what a heroic young man. This young lad is so clever and so strong. I'll have to tell the king." For you see, he was one of the king's men. And he went back to the main city of the kingdom and told the king all about this laddie Jack that he had come across. Now the king was in a bit of bother, and he really needed the help of a lad like Jack. And so he told his man and to go back to the village and to bring Jack back to the castle because he had a job for him. So Jack was quite stunned when suddenly the king's men arrived at his door and demanded that he went with them. to the castle, and his heart sank because he thought, maybe all these folk are right. I'm finally going to be punished for all the tales that I've been telling. But he had to go. It was commanded by the king. And he went to the castle, and he's standing there in front of the king, and he's shaking in his boots. And the king said, I have a sore trouble and I need help. Because you see, there's the Red Knight in the next kingdom has stolen my daughter. And he has promised on his honour to give her back if I can answer 3 riddles. But if not, he'll marry her and I'll never see her again. So I need help with the riddles. Oh, said Jack, right. He didn't know what to think, but the first riddle he was given was, what is whiter than white? And Jack immediately started to think of everything that he could that was white. Clouds in the sky, sheets, bed sheets, daisies. But he thought, oh, that can't be the answer. And he said, I need some time to think about this. I'll give you till tomorrow, said the king. And Jack went off. Well, he didn't want to stay in the castle. He walked out down the road and into the woods. And he came across an old woman with a bag of sticks. And they looked very heavy. And she looked old and frail. So he helped her. Took that wood back to her cottage for her. And she said, oh, Jack, thank you so much. Come away in and have a cup of tea. And so they sat down. And she said, Jack, you look troubled. Is there something bothering you? And he told her about the riddle. And he told her the riddle. And she laughed and she said, well, I'm an old woman. I've lived a long time and I know the answer to that riddle, but I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is that tomorrow morning, before you go to see the king, go down to the washing line and you'll see there on the line, you'll see the king's favourite shirt. It'll be beautiful white satin shirt with embroidery. Take that shirt and wear it when you stand before the king, and the answer will come to you. Jack thought that was strange, but he followed the advice of the old woman. And the next day, there he stood in front of the king with his beautiful embroidered shirt. And the king looked at Jack and said, that's my shirt. And Jack just automatically said, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not your shirt at all. And the king said, yes, definitely. That's my favourite shirt you're wearing. And then just like that, Jack knew the answer to the riddle. And he said, Your Majesty, the answer to your riddle is truth is whiter than white. Oh, said the king, that's quite a good answer. I like that. Okay, the second riddle. What is redder than red? And so immediately Jack was thinking about blood and red wine and all the things that he could think of that was red, poppies, anything. But he thought, But again, he was given 24 hours. And of course, this time, on purpose, he went out of the castle, down the road and into the woods and went to visit the old woman. And he told her the riddle. She said, well, I've lived a long life. And of course, I know the answer to that riddle, but I can't tell you. But I can give you a clue. And the answer will come to you. Tonight, I want you to sneak into the king's bedchamber. And he wears every day, he wears these long pair of bright red underpants, but they're kind of long, like long. And he loves them. He absolutely loves them. He wears them every day. The queen can't stand them, but he has to have these lucky long johns. He takes them off at night and puts them under his pillow, steal them, and then go back in the morning into his room, and the answer will come to you. Jack thought this was mad, but he trusted the old woman. And so that night he snuck into the king's bedchamber and he stole those long johns from under his pillow. Well, the next morning, bright and early, he went along to the king's bedroom and he could hear shouting and roaring and cursing. And he went into the room and there was the king, absolutely stark naked, running about the room, shouting and roaring. Where are the long johns? Where are they? Where are they? And the queen was just laughing, and so were the guard. Everyone was laughing at him. And the more they laughed, the more the king turned red with embarrassment. And then suddenly, Jack knew the answer. He took those long johns out from under his shirt and he said, "Are these what you're looking for?" And the king snatched them and said, "Yes, yes." And he said, "Well, that's the answer to the riddle. What is redder than red? Embarrassment is redder than red. Just look at your face." And the king had to laugh and say, "Ah, well, that's a good answer as well to that riddle." The last riddle: what is blacker than black? And again, all sorts of ideas were flicking through Jack's head, but this time he didn't think too hard. He just went straight out of the castle and down to the old woman's house. And he told her the riddle and she said, "Jack, that's a harder one. But I'm an old woman. I've lived a long time. I know the answer to it, but I can't help you. I can't help you at all. You'll have to work it out yourself." Well, Jack went back to the castle and he was feeling absolutely miserable about this because he thought, how am I going to work it out? And he came along the road and there he saw on the side of the road a dead crow lying there. And he thought, well, that's quite, shiny, beautiful, black and iridescent feathers. Maybe that's the answer. And he picked up the crow. But he wasn't sure. The next day when he went into the courtroom where the king was, there was lots of people there. And as he was standing waiting his turn to speak to the king, he saw off on the side of the crowd a young woman dressed completely in black. She was a young widow. She'd just lost her husband. Jack knew the answer. He said to the king, "Death is blacker than black." And the king said, "I think you've got those answers for me, Jack. Thank you." And so he went to the Red Knight and he told the Red Knight those answers. And the Red Knight was amazed that the king had managed to find the right answers to those riddles. And he gave the daughter back to the king. And great rejoicing when she returned to the kingdom, for now she could marry for love instead of being forced into a marriage that she didn't want. Now, I don't know who she married. Maybe she married Jack, or maybe Jack went home with lots of rewards, lots of jingling coins in his pocket. But whatever, he lived a long, good life after that. And that's the story as I heard it from Stanley.
I've heard that story before, yes. Okay, so we've got Canada Norman and we've got Susan. Or if you want to do something, now is your opportunity. If you don't want to do something, that's fine. There's no pressure at all. So just unmute yourselves and see where we go.
How much time do we have?
For about 3 days.
3 days.
We've got, it's 7:30. We tried to wrap it up by about 8 o'clock. So
okay then. Well, rather than give the story which has riddles in it, and it's a longish story from Africa, which I'd like to tell another time, but I'll give you 3 riddles. And listening to the story you just told, you should be able to work out the 3 riddles. What is the heaviest thing what is the lightest thing in the world? What is the heaviest thing in the world? And what is the most generous thing in the world? So the first one, what is the lightest? What is the heaviest? And what is the most generous?
Okay. Everybody unmute yourselves. Just everybody unmute yourselves. Okay. Right. So anybody want to have a go at it? What's the
lightest thing in the world?
Is it happiness, Norman?
That's a good answer. The answer I have is the heart of a woman going to her lover.
Yeah, I'd say love. I knew
Yes.
it as love. Yeah.
Yeah, love. What is the heaviest thing in the world? It's related to the first riddle.
The sorrow
Right.
for a loved one lost.
The burden.
That's it. Yes.
The burden of
heart.
grief.
Yeah, the heaviest thing is carrying a dead or the heart of a parent carrying their child to the grave. And the most generous thing in the world is
A good-hearted person. Generous.
that's part of it.
Yeah, lay down your life for your best friend.
That's part of it. Okay, the answer is the world itself. For it is generous in giving of things to enjoy, to food, everything, delight. So therefore the world is the most generous thing in the world.
I would agree, even in this tumultuous time.
Yeah.
Because you can find solace with friendship. I mean, just like we're here now, generously giving of ourselves. Because we are the what? World Storytelling Cafe.
That's right. And so you've answered my riddles 3. You may pass now to the next story.
Right.
Hey, Norm. Norman, I just first have to say hello to my Rafiki from the north. Hello to my friend from the north.
Right, so in next time when we come here in a couple of weeks' time, can everybody bring a riddle with them? How about doing that? That would be good fun, because riddles, we all know some of the riddles, but looking for new riddles is something that we all do. So I'll bring one along from Shropshire, and Kath, you can bring one from Staffordshire. Okay. So that would be good fun.
Heather. Heather.
Mike, you might have to.
Yeah, so the first 2 letters of my name. First name.
Mike, you might have to announce yourself on the next one.
Okay, that's okay. Someone's unmuted and I can hear someone in the background.
Because there's 2.
Right. Right. I've got a question to ask Diana and Heather. So I'm going to stop the storytelling, but I'm happy to leave it open because I know what the question is, but I don't know what the answer is. Some of you are just going to smile when I ask the question, right? So it's Heather and to Diana. This is the question, yeah? The word cushion or kishin, right? So, because Stanley usually said the Viking was kishing it down the road. And I have no idea what that means. I've never heard it before. So have you ever heard it?
I haven't, sorry. Heather?
Yeah, I have, but I'm not quite sure. I'd have to see it in context. He used a lot of cant words, which is the traveller. Oh. You know, he sort of sometimes it used the sort of traveller language and Scots and Gaelic kind of derivations.
The only other person I've ever heard use it is Billy Connolly. And not that I was there in person. He was telling a joke on YouTube and he used it then. And I was thinking, and what he said was that the flames were kissing it out the back of a Volvo. And I'm sure when Stanley was telling that story and I was working it out, I just left it out tonight because I didn't know what it meant. But it was in that story. And it's the part when the 2 men are left in the barn, but the one is leaving and he rushes down into the town. It's that part of the story. But you'll have to find the word and put it in context if you want to use it. But that was the only bit I couldn't work out. Okay.
Okay.
Future.
Sorry, I missed that.
Mike.
Yeah.
You might have to introduce to the ladies and gentlemen yourself.
So where are you going to be?
I'll be doing it off my phone, and I'll be in under Kate Rusby's festival in Yorkshire, and I'm not sure
No, don't worry about it.
I'll try and get there.
Yeah, we will miss you if you're not there, John, but we're practiced enough to be able to get it sorted out, so we'll be fine. Okay?
Yeah, you've done it once or twice.
Yeah, we're getting used to
this. You've done this sort of thing a couple of times before.
Yeah, we're just beginning to get there now. Okay. Right, so thank you all for coming. I hope to Diana and Heather, I really hope that was useful to you. There's another couple. There were 7 altogether. Whether I can find all 7 in the back of my mind, I'll see. But I know there is another one that's emerging. The more I think about it, I think I've got another one. We'll see how we get on. But they are a gift. He gave them to me, and I give them to you. They're just a gift. Okay. Stories are only alive when they've been told, and dead stories are no good to anybody. Okay. Right.
As always, Mike. And what we've got coming up, Tuesdays, as always, will be our Young International at 5 o'clock. That's an hour earlier on Tuesday. Friday, there might be amongst the tellers a very familiar figure. Rest, we got pirate stories on Friday from Kath Ed, Mike Faxty, and Shane Ebbs. So that's going to be something. Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, if anyone's in the morning. Obviously, I know you like doing all-nighters. We've got 10 o'clock in the morning, so our Asian and Australasian friends can join. Australasian tellers and anyone else who's awake at that time. Sunday, we join with, I haven't done anything about your request, Mike, but I will. We join with Moth and Butterfly, which is the Irish festival, and they're putting on Rock the Casbah. So Rock the Casbah comes from Ireland next Sunday, which is the fundraiser for our festival, which we still need loads of funds for. And then life just goes on in that. Where there's always something Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday, and occasionally. Yeah. We need to wish Ali a happy Eid. He's having 3 days. Ali is having 3 days off. It's the first 3 days off he's had in the last 2,000 years. So happy Eid, Ali, and have a fantastic holiday. And
thank you so much, John. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, always thank you, Ali, for what you do for us. And you're always hidden for me, but thank you very much. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to meeting.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to meeting you face to face, Ali, in February. I really am.
So thank you. And Susan, one day you will come to. You keep promising to bring us a story.
No, only if she wants to. Only if.
Only if you want. Only if you want.
John, we're all recovering from COVID at the moment, so I came forward.
Well, in that case, you don't have to have an excuse for not telling, but that's quite a good one. Listeners, and how is everyone coming through it? Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Brilliant.
To be continued until the next time.
Always continued.
Just bring a riddle with you next time. We'll do riddles next time.
Riddles. Love riddles.
Riddle me this.
All right.
Next time. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.